Hey guys, happy Monday and welcome to our very first episode of Mastery Monday. Every Monday I'm going to bring you a highly tactical video where I'm going to talk about skill gaps that we're seeing in the market so that you can literally finish this video and go and implement them, and this week build some pipeline. So we're going to be talking to you about today cold calling. I'm still seeing, across sales organizations that I work with and also individual contributors, 70% of pipeline is being built by cold calling. So I see a lot of reps struggle with it, so I thought I'd go deep and wide. So what I'm going to cover today, I've got a couple of different chapters I want to take you through. I actually did a cold calling webinar a couple of weeks ago, and these were the top questions or areas of focus from people. So just in case you weren't on that episode, I'm going to cover them today. So we're going to go deep and wide on why cold calling still works in 2025, mistakes that we see reps make, cold call preparation that actually increases conversion rates, best cold call scripts using examples that my last team used to go from 6 meetings a month to 60 meetings a month. And also I've got a testimonial on our LinkedIn page where a recent customer grew meetings by 500% by working with us by using this script. So I'll give you an idea on what the script looks like. Openers, cold call openers that actually work, handling objections. What else have we got here? Cold calling tips from top performers, when to call, what's the best time of day and day of the week to call, warm calling versus cold calling. Yeah, I see this every now and then on LinkedIn, so I'll talk about that. And then maybe my final takeaways and maybe a cold call challenge for you guys. So let's stop at the start of the top, why I think cold calling is still critical and why it still works in 2025. So if you think about AI and automation, a lot of organizations are trying to solve their pipeline and revenue problems by throwing more at the wall. Okay, what they're not doing is solving the skill gaps that they have. So the problem is automation is kicking in. We're sending loads more emails. It's becoming easier to send loads more emails, and we're missing the mark. So the reason that cold calling is so effective is just most reps aren't prepared to do it. So the ones that are have a massive advantage over their peers, okay? So there's less noise for them to cut through compared to a busy inbox, be it an email inbox or a LinkedIn inbox, okay? The other thing that I think is hugely valuable is if you think about the explosion of AI, there's so many more competitors that you're faced with in the market. Now, when you're having a cold call with somebody, you can actually handle objections and build value. It's easier for you to articulate value over a cold call versus trying to get everything into what these gurus reckon should be 12-word emails, right? So if you're on the phone with somebody, I can have a better conversation about building value, talking about positive business outcomes that we're proven to deliver. I can also handle objections live. When it's an email, if they don't reply, I don't actually know what their objection is. Or if they say no budget or not interested, I can't really do much other than reply, right? I can pick up the phone, but I might not get through. So cold calling, it still works because I can have a live conversation, there's less noise, and I can increase my chances of booking a meeting by articulating better value. So the next topic is mistakes that reps make. So one of the mistakes that I see a lot of reps make, and I probably made a lot of these mistakes in my time as well, and I've got no problem admitting that, but one is poor list management. So they go into a cold call power hour and they actually don't have the list ready. So they're doing it as they're calling, or they haven't prioritized the list. So for me, what I used to get my teams to do and what I used to do as a rep is, let's say I've got 50 people I want to phone this hour. I'm going to have them starting at the top mobile numbers, and then I'm going to finish off with gatekeepers, right? I want to get those quick wins in. I want to get straight into conversations. Why? Because I've just spent half an hour role playing and practicing and getting myself warmed up. I want to be at my best and I want to be speaking to people quickly, and mobile numbers are obviously going to help. If you get inbound leads, start with inbound leads, then move to cold leads, but they've got mobile numbers, and then move to finish off with cold leads where it's just like office numbers, right? So I just see reps make that mistake, poor list management, maybe a lack of focus as well. Like I used to walk around the sales floor, and when we're doing a cold call power hour, I can see reps scrolling through the news feed or checking WhatsApp on their phone while the phone's ringing. You need to be super dialed in, switch off all those distractions. Your mobile goes off, turn Slack, Teams, Gmail, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, get rid of all these distractions. Be super dialed in, be really present in what you're doing, and when the call connects, you're ready to go. I used to hear sales reps used to cold call me when I was a VP of sales, and there was this delay, and it's like them stumbling because they're probably just daydreaming out the window, wishing they were doing anything but making cold calls. So just be present, be fully focused. And then the other mistake that I see is, again, I did a webinar on this recently. If you weren't able to join that, let me know and I'll share the recording, around not hitting their numbers. So a lot of reps actually have no idea how many calls they need to make based on how many connects, based on how many conversations, based on how many meetings booked, based on how many shows or meetings held. So if you actually reverse engineer your numbers, and let's say, for example, you need to book one meeting a day, and it takes you personally 79 cold calls to book a meeting. If you're only making 47 cold calls, you're going to struggle. So we need to actually be hitting the numbers based on our data to be successful. And that's another mistake that I see, unfortunately, a lot of sales reps make. All right, cool. Next one is cold call preparation to increase conversion rates. As we know, it's hugely competitive out there. Status quo is still winning a lot of our opportunities because we're not actually articulating business value. So everything sounds the same, or they have some kind of degree of confidence in their current state. So we need to show them a better way. And part of that comes from research and actually showing them that we understand their world. So I built this thing in 2017 called the Daily 5. You basically just sequence 5 research prospects every single day. You go into CRM or your sales engagement tool like SalesLoft or Outreach or Gong, and you just basically document your hypothesis and you pin it at the very top. So you do your homework up front. So every time that call is dialing, you're looking at a couple of bullet points so that when the call connects, your opener, your pitch, your stories, your problem statements, everything are fully aligned to that customer's world. And that's, again, going to increase your status as a seller, somebody that they want to spend time with, and also increase the chances of you booking a meeting, right? So do your research up front outside of calling hours so that when you're making the dials or even sending emails afterwards, you can lean into all of that great research to stand out like a sore thumb in a positive way. All right, let's talk about the best cold call script template. So again, happy to share all of the receipts to back up all of these claims. But my last team went from 6 to 60 meetings per month, primarily because I taught them how to actually make cold calls. They were just sending emails before. And then we basically built a script, a framework that just seemed to work for all 3 personas. So basically the framework is really simple. If you want the full script, I did a webinar a couple of weeks ago where 100 people turned up and I took them through it. If you want the full video to that, just let me know, or I'll try and put a link in the post somewhere so you can go and grab that. But basically the framework follows an opener, some kind of clear permission-based opener or whatever works for you. I'm going to give you a couple of examples today. An opener. Then we want to plant some problems, a problem statement that we're typically seeing with their persona in their industry, that kind of thing. Then we want to do a little bit of discovery to understand their current state and what they want to be doing differently and why. Then we want to tell some fantastic customer stories. We are in sales selling change, and we need to inspire people to take action and build some confidence in that. And if we've got really well-aligned customer stories that we can tell on cold calls, people might not want to buy right there and then, but they'll definitely want to come and learn a little bit more if they know that their peers are getting huge value from a solution or a service or a product that you sell. Then we need to go into the close. So we've told a fantastic story. Now we want to tie back to our permission-based opener. Sounds something like, hey, anyway, Julie, I know I asked for 30 seconds originally. Thanks so much for giving me some more time here. I think we might be able to help you guys out. Don't want to make any assumptions. I'd love to recommend 2 next steps. And then we move into my 2-step close talk track where it's like, hey, first step is I'm going to pop you over some content today, basically outlining everything we spoke about today with that case study that I mentioned. The second thing is I'd love to show you actually how our solution works. It's a very visual tool. I'm looking at my calendar right now. How's 10 a.m. tomorrow or 3 p.m. on Friday? Which one works best for you? And then go quiet. The reason I do that double step is I used to get a lot of people say, send me an email. So I actually incorporated it into my closing talk track to prevent them from asking it. And I found a higher conversion rate with me. And then when I built teams, my teams also overcame that challenge as well. And then obviously you're going to get some kind of objections, early, middle, or late. Again, we'll talk about those later in this video and what you can do to best overcome those. Okay, cool. So if you want that framework, if you want to actually see the words in the script, just let me know, or there'll be a link in the post somewhere where you can go and access that. Let's talk about handling objections next. So I see a lot of reps when I'm listening to their calls and doing coaching and things like that, or I'm kicking off a prospecting boot camp with a sales organization and I start to listen to their calls to get an understanding of where the skill gaps might be. I hear a lot of sellers get really defensive when objections come up, especially around like competitors or budget and things like that. And people typically default to things like, oh, if it's like budget, anyway, why don't you just take a meeting anyway? Like, you might be interested one day or you might have budget one day. And I think that's just such a lazy approach. So don't get defensive when you get objections. Embrace them. They're coming. Practice them. and then be genuinely curious when you receive them. And that's going to buy you a little bit of time. So let's just say, for example, someone says, hey, send me an email. I might say something like, sure, what have you heard today that excites you that you want to learn a little bit more about? And they might say X, Y, Z, and then do a little bit more discovery, maybe tell a little bit more of a story, and then say something like, just to be honest with you, an email might actually bring up more questions than answers. It's a very visual tool. Looking at the calendar, how's 10 a.m. tomorrow for a quick 30,000 foot view on the product? And if it's relevant, we can have a longer conversation. Would that work for you? Just try that approach. That seems to work pretty well with my teams and now with the customers that I work with. Does it work 100% of the time? Nothing in sales does, but it seems to be doing a pretty good job. If people are like, hey, call me back in 6 months, my favorite way of doing this is like when I'm running discovery, just again, be curious. Hey, no worries. Can you tell me what's happening in 6 months' time? Right. And they might say, that's when my budget is refreshed in January. And you might say, look, just being fully transparent. This is a mid-market or enterprise solution. It's probably going to take you 6 months to go through first conversation with me, internal conversations and drive consensus, get budget approval, and then make our way through the procurement process. So given that budget refreshes in 6 months, there's actually no big decisions to make at this stage. If we feel like we're aligned on the first meeting, we can spend the next 3 to 6 months actually working through your internal process so that when budget's available, you can pull the trigger and get started, rather than starting that 6 month process in January and then having to wait 6 months. Let's make best use of this time. Does that sound like a good plan to you? Again, confidence and experience here is really important, but the key with objections, just like the rest of the cold call and anything in sales, is practice. If you're not practicing it internally, you are practicing it, but on prospects, and that's a really expensive mistake to make given that connect rates are so low these days. If you had 20, 30, 40% connect rate, you could afford to make mistakes every now and then, but most of you are speaking to 2, 3, 4 people a day. You just can't afford to make those mistakes. You need strong execution. Okay, next up, let's talk about when is the best time to call. I get asked this question all of the time on webinars. I see this like floating around on LinkedIn all of the time. There is no perfect time. There's a couple of like good times to call, but it's not a perfect time. So a couple of like good times to call would be when other people aren't calling. So like Monday mornings, typically people are told don't call people. They're starting off their week. Like I've just not seen that kind of result in like negative output from my sales teams and my sales reps. Like I'm not saying call people at 8:59 when they're going into their 9 a.m. stand up, but call people like around 9:30 when they're getting out their first call and their first like internal meeting, and start having conversations where most reps, they're just rolling up to the desk, they're having coffee chats around the coffee machine about what they get up to at the weekend. Get out there, start hunting. It's like when you're sending prospecting emails. Sometimes executives, the best time to email them is a Sunday afternoon because they're usually sat at their desk getting a head start on their week or reflecting or clearing their inbox, and your email pops up at the top of their inbox on a Sunday afternoon. It's probably going to get read, right? So same with cold calling. Try and call when other people aren't. Another really good time to make cold calls is towards the top of the hour. So let's say, for example, it's 10:45. I might just blitz like 15 cold calls right now for the next 15 minutes because I know I might catch a champion or an economic buyer, whoever it is I'm calling. I might actually catch them in between meetings, and that could be a really great time for me to make that cold call. So again, test that as well, but I don't think there's any perfect time of the day or of the week to make that call. There's just a couple of better times to make that call. All right. Warm calling versus cold calling. Again, I see this quite a lot. Like every cold call is cold. Every call is cold. Like even an inbound lead, when we get an inbound training request from a CRO or a VP of sales, and I phone them, that is a cold call. We don't know each other. We've never spoken before. So let's just forget this whole warm calling, cold calling thing. Even if like a customer gives me a referral, it's a cold call. We've never spoken before. It's an ice cold relationship. But there's definitely scripts and frameworks that you can use. So like at my last org, we got the odd inbound lead. We had some like ebook downloads, webinar signups, event attendees, that kind of stuff. We had just different scripts and talk tracks for the beginning parts of those calls so that when we opened them, it was like hyper relevant, hyper aligned to the specific type of lead that we were calling on. Obviously, cold calls were just our normal cold call scripts based on personas, but we had a couple of frameworks for like when we were calling up people that downloaded an ebook or attended a webinar or had a conversation with us at a conference, that kind of thing. Cool. And then final takeaways, guys, from me, and maybe a little bit of a cold call challenge at the back end of this. But one thing to take away from this is it's bloody hard. That's why it works, right? If it was easy, we'd all be millionaires. Actually, we probably wouldn't. If it was easy, none of us would earn anywhere near the amount of money that we can earn in sales, because it's bloody hard work, right? And only the people that are prepared to get gritty, accountable, and stick to it every single day, 5 days a week, every single month, every single quarter. They don't make excuses. They just get on with it. They know it sucks. They know they don't really want to be doing it, but they know it puts money in their pocket. Those are the ones that typically win. The ones that sit there blaming the leads or the market or the economy or their product or marketing, whatever it is, those people usually don't make it or go very far. So it's bloody hard. Just make sure that you get gritty. Biggest challenge in sales is skill gaps. We see this. A lot of organizations are seeing, actually, we've got all these tools now. We're still struggling to build pipeline and convert ops to close one deal. So just make sure that you're focused on things like today, mastery, and really trying to figure out the best way for you to go through prospecting and driving deals through the funnel. So become a master of those skills, and your conversations will significantly improve. Therefore, so will your conversion rates. So my challenge to you is, go and grab access to some of the content. I'll put it into the post here. Reverse engineer your numbers. And if your data tells you that you need to make 97 cold calls every single day to book a meeting every day, then just get accountable, go and get it done while working on your skills in the background so that you can lower that number. And then you'll spend less time prospecting and book the same amount, if not book more. And for anybody listening to this that says, hey, I can't make 97 cold calls a day, a lot of us that got into sales more than 5 years ago, we were KPI'd and micromanaged to make 100 cold calls a day. Build your own databases by Google searching companies and manually adding them to the database, and then running discovery calls, demo calls, trial calls or proof of concepts, negotiation calls, and then doing one-to-ones, forecast meetings, end of day meetings, all of that kind of stuff. So you absolutely can do it. I just feel like sales has slightly changed a little bit in terms of our expectations of salespeople. We're here to get a job done. We need to get super accountable. Our job is to drive revenue. We need to go and do the hard stuff that nobody's prepared to do. That's why we're paid so much money, and that's why the opportunity is so great for us. So get accountable, make a challenge over the next 30 days, reverse engineer your numbers, figure out exactly what you specifically need to do every day to book meetings over the phone, and then just hold yourself accountable. And on a Friday afternoon, ask yourself, did I earn my salary this week? Did I actually put in all of the time that I was paid for? And if not, why not? What can I cut out of my workflow to make me more effective and more efficient as a seller? And do I get a better result next week? I hope you got value from this. If you've got any questions, let me know. We've got a bunch of masterclasses that we're running every month, so make sure you grab a seat for those, RSVP. Again, we'll put links and resources into the post somewhere here. And if I don't speak to you before then, I'll see you next Monday for another episode of Mastery Monday.